Alright folks, so got a 2018 Nissan Titan with the 5.6 liter. So this is not an XD model. There are XD models with the 5.6 liter, but just letting you know it's not a Cummins diesel that they put in them. So, and the trim level for this one's a Platinum Reserve actually. What we're doing is the coil pack replacement. In this case, I'm going to show how to change some of the coil packs, but specifically the far right side, or the driver's side, most rear coil pack back there. Can't really see it from here. You will as the video progresses. And then for the four rear cylinders, the coil pack is different than the front four cylinders. So just know when you go to buy these that they're not the same between the all 8 cylinders. The rear four are different part number, as I said. Here it is right here. This says a Stemo, so Hitachi either contracts with these guys or this is a subsidiary brand of them. And in fact, even on the coil pack itself, it has Hitachi on the coil pack. That's the part number right there, IGC0093. That is the OEM one. You can get aftermarket ones if you choose. I like to try to go with OEM for stuff like this, and these weren't too bad of a price. It's like, I think I bought these for $38 a piece. The front ones were a little bit more expensive, but to me it's worth it. Peace of mind. And you know, these are designed to last 100,000 miles. I'd rather not have any issues before then. Okay, so some things to access that driver's side. Rearmost coil pack. So you're going to need to get out the way is the air box. So you're going to take your MAF connector off. There's a little retaining clip that goes right there. Just remove it from there. Then it's these little snap connectors for the air box. And then this right here, it can be a flat tip or 5/16 socket. And you're going to lift up. I've already loosened it. Boom, there you go. That's going to allow you more access with your arm to get back in there. With that air box in the way, it's too high and you got a weird thing going on. You got real small arms, maybe you can fit back in there, but I don't. So this is the way I found that makes it pretty easy to do, and this takes, you know, a minute and a half to instead of remove. Okay, so now we look at our coil packs. It looks something like this right here. It's light outside, it's still kind of hard to see with this camera. Piece of junk, but maybe if I get some more subscribers, get a little bit more funding, and then I can buy better cameras. There's the connector for it right there, that gray connector. A little bit of pain to get to. You can do it though, especially with that air box removed. You should be able to get to it. There's one bolt holding these in place, 10mm. Okay, so you're going to get your hand in here. It's a little snap tab. If you need to, you can cut some zip ties to loosen the wire harness for the coil pack cable, but it is doable without it. Again, like I say, it is not easy. I've removed these before to replace the spark plugs. It just takes a little bit of patience. You got to be gentle with these clips because you don't want them to break. There we go. And it popped off there. There it is. I'll get a little closer in on it. I'll probably probably do it on a different coil just so you can see or get a better view of it in an easier spot, but that's it right there. When you go to reconnect it, it's keyed, so it will only go on in one direction. So you don't have to worry about it being flipped backwards or something like that, or connecting it incorrectly. And then again, 10 millimeter. I like to use a 1/4 inch drive ratchet. I'm probably not going to need a 6-inch extension for this because it's a tight spot. You may end up having to use a swivel head to work yourself in there too. It's been a little bit of time since I did this last, so bear with me. Right now I have a 2-inch extension on. In addition to the socket. Okay. And another reason, or the reason, I like to use a 1/4 inch is because it's a tight space. You don't have much room in there to ratchet. And these bolts, they don't have a lot of torque on them from the get-go, and they shouldn't have a lot of torque when you put them back in place. Enough torque, but not too much. I'll remove this ratchet at this time just so I can get my hand in there and turn the extension with the socket by hand to loosen this bolt. Okay. There it is. Now, with the wire harness, because there are multiple coil wire harnesses connected together or bunched together, you want to push the harness down below the coil pack connector jack or plug, so then you can get enough clearance above it to pull this out. Hopefully this little tip stayed in place on it, and it did, thank goodness. Okay folks, lesson learned for me, and I got lucky on this one. Here's the coil pack, by the way. That's it. And then we can see here there was the original Hitachi number, hard to see in the camera. That's it though. Anyway, so what I was getting at is lesson learned, and I got lucky, like I say, figuring this out early on in my coil pack replacements. But when I changed the spark plugs, I changed those about 25,000 miles ago. This truck has 95,000 miles on it, so these are coming due. That's why I'm going ahead and just getting ahead of it now. But I replaced these essentially extensions or coil pack conduits when I changed the spark plugs. They're cheap. There's like $3 a piece, so that's why I changed them. However, the OEM ones do not come with a detachable rubber boot like the aftermarket ones I bought did. So these caused me some problems on a couple of the other coil packs, and I can show you that these just come off like that. So you can buy just this piece. You don't have to buy the entire coil pack if you know you have a problem with these. Again, these were $3, so it was cheap insurance for me. That's why I bought them and replaced them at the time of the spark plug replacement. But like I say, the OEM ones do not come with this detachable rubber tip at the end, because what will happen is this sticks on the spark plug on the inside of the cylinder, and this thing is a bear to get out. You got to use a slightly hooked pick, and then just hook this thing until you hopefully grab enough rubber to pull it out. And I advised at that time, spray some like WD-40 or something in there to break the suction or the grip of the spark, or that rubber on the porcelain of the spark plug. Okay, and I'll show you. Trying to move this along as I'm talking here, but I'll show you what the OEM ones look like, and it is that. It's one piece. Okay, that's the Estemo. On the side though, you can still see that's a Hitachi. Sounded like I was having a stroke there for a second. Yeah, that's it. So, not a bad idea to put some dielectric grease on there. I'm gonna grab that in a minute. Okay, so now I got some dielectric in place on this thing. I like to put it, I'll show you the boot in a minute, but I like to put it on these keyways essentially for it, and then where the snap clip goes, and then around this, and then the inside edge, and just on the outside edge, because there's the rubber of the plug that seals against this, or the connector that seals against this plug of the coil. It'll also help you for later removal. And then also too, I like to do a bead around this. Okay, you don't want to put these on the contacts because dielectric is made to not conduct electricity. It's actually like an insulator. One note though is when you take your coils off, especially for the ones that are hard to see and hard to get to, make sure you make note of how they were oriented, because some of them are like that, some of them are like this, and then there's one or two that are even facing upwards. So make sure you made note of that, because it'll be frustrating when you're trying to put this thing back and you can't get it to line up with the bolt. Okay. Now if you're doing your spark plugs at the same time as this, a 14 millimeter is the spark plug socket that you need. It specifically needs to be a thin wall socket, and then if you can get one with a magnet in the inside to help grab the spark plug, that's even better. But it has to be a thin wall socket. It can't be the ones just sitting in your toolbox that you bought, because those generally have too thick of a wall and you risk getting your spark plug socket stuck inside of the cylinder. And then you're going to have a real fun day fishing that out. Okay, so I've put that back in place. Put your bolt back in. You can put a little bit of like anti-seize or a little bit of grease, even dielectric grease on there as well. Even wax will work. I'm not going to on mine, but you can if you want. Do not put Loctite. I will tell you that. I'm putting it in by hand at first. Hand tightening. Okay, kind of snugged up. And that's the extension I'm using right there. That's a 2-inch, it's not a 3-inch extension. You could probably get away with a 3-inch as well. But I have this 2-inch, I don't know where I got it from, and that's what I use. And then, like I say, I use with the probably 6-inch handled 1/4-inch drive. 1/4-inch drive ratchet. Ooh, almost dropped it. I'll say preferably if you have one, a fine toothed or very high gear number ratchet is better, because you want to have minimal movement in between your ratcheting actions. because you don't have a lot of space to work with here. And then that right there, that little bit of torque is good. I don't know the torque spec, it ain't much. It's in the single digit of foot-pounds. Yeah, back here, you can see my finger. So you see that right there is where that bolt is. So I'm looking down and through this to see that bolt head so I can work it. Now we're going to put our connector back. It doesn't fall too far out of place. And you'll thank yourself later if you put that dielectric grease on the end of that plug of the coil pack. It'll be that much easier to remove the next time, or if you have to do this again. And that's it. If I wasn't recording this, I could have been done in about probably less than 10 minutes, I can tell you that. Okay, the one that's a little bit easier to get to, that I'll show, would be one like this. Okay, and that's the first cylinder on this side. Again, hard to see. And then there's another one right here. So here's that connector that connects to the coil pack. And I highly advise you do the front ones first, so you get an idea of how these connectors go in place, or how they kind of work, before you venture to the back ones where you can't see, or very well at least. So you're going to pinch the end of this down. You can kind of hear it snap. Probably not on camera, but you can hear it where I'm at. And you might have to do a little rocking side to side. There we go. And that comes off just like that. And then there it is. Okay. There's that bolt for this coil pack specifically. And if you notice, this one is turned differently than some of the other coil packs. Oh boy, let me see. Get this in here. See, in this one, you will need a variety of extensions. Swivel head. Or if you had a straight 3-inch extension, you'd be alright too. Again, all these other ones have been changed. That last one, I didn't have the time because it was dark already, and it was cold, so I was kind of done fooling with it for the day. It's unseasonably warm weather right now, so good day to kind of do some maintenance. If you need to do it. It's also easier on plastics because they're not as brittle when it's warmer. And for this one, again, you can kind of move this stuff out the way as needed. There is a little retaining tab here that goes into part of the valve cover. You might have to unclip that. Not that big of a deal. And you can move this as you need to, this harness, to get it out. This one's also easy to get to, so the need to put some in there for ease of removal is not exactly as, at least in my opinion, is critical. But down here, definitely a good idea still. Alright, these are the front four though. Front four part numbers, or front four coil packs. This is the part number. The Hitachi, I couldn't find those anymore, so I went with the Delphi. These ones were more expensive. I don't recall the cost, but they were, I I think they were about $60 or something like that a piece. Okay, here's what I'm looking at. From this angle, there's the coil. I'm touching it with my finger. There's the essentially like the bushing for the bolt to go through right there, and it's lined up in place. So you want to take your bolt before you connect them and get your bolt. Make sure you get it started at a minimum. You should just go ahead and get it tightened all the way before you connect the plug. And you might have to rock it side to side a little bit. Okay, so I got this in there. I just ran it down loosely. Get the ratchet back in play with it. Get this connected. Once you meet contact, where you can tell that the coil pack is seated on the valve cover, you want to go ahead and, not much, just that's about all I put on there. At most a quarter of a turn past tight. Alright, so then you'll go ahead and put that back in place. Snapped on. Don't tug on the wires. Grab the connector again and pull a little bit just to make sure it locked in place. Feels like that's maybe slightly moving. No, it's definitely on. Okay. Yeah. All right. Oh yes. Before I get too far into this quality of work here, put that back in place so it's locked in. You don't want your wire harness bouncing around over the road, because that's going to cause you some chafing issues, or potentially could. Okay, kind of lift this back up. Okay, then make sure your air box, there's a tab on this side, there's a tab on that side. Make sure those slide back in place. Boom. Go ahead and lock it up like that. There's this piece right here. There's this piece. Okay, goes in. There's your MAF connector. Snap back in place. Okay. You don't need to do crazy tight with all the torquing this stuff down. You just want it snug. Okay. Boom. And that's in a nutshell how you do these coil pack replacements. It's not much. That one back there, the rearmost driver side, is the hardest one. The one in front of it is, I'd probably say, the second most difficult one. So if you can do those, you can do any of them. You can do the whole thing in probably an hour and a half. If you're changing the spark plugs, definitely an hour and a half, maybe even 2 hours. But if you're doing the coil packs, hour and a half at most. Good luck. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Thanks.